All right, and we are live. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are, and welcome to the fifth technical workshop of Polkadot Hackathon APAC edition. Today, joining us today, we actually have Ben, who is the Director of Ecosystem Success from Parity Technologies, and he will share with you about how you can be a part of the Polkadot ecosystem. What are some of the different paths that you can take based on the area of interest, or what anything that you really kind of like draw you to be part of the ecosystem. So without further ado, Ben, please take the stage.
Oh yeah, thank you very much, and hello everybody. So I have to figure out on how to share my screen actually, right? Wait, how do I do this? Share screen. Yeah, that sounds about right. 1 second. Just gonna move a bunch of stuff from left to right. Let's go in here. Share the screen, and then hopefully this works. Start. So I hope everybody can see my screen now because I can't see anything anymore. But does it work? You see the first slide?
Yep, I can see your slide.
Okay, amazing. All right, so thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and it's really cool to see so many people being around. What I want to do today is like go through a bunch of ways you can actually build in the ecosystem, as well as what support is available in the ecosystem. So I divided both things into a more technical approach where you say, okay, what can I actually build in the ecosystem and how does it look like and what are the possibilities? And the second one is what support in the ecosystem, in the Polkadot, Substrate, Kusama ecosystem is available, and what it takes, or what are these specific support initiatives are actually aiming for to go forward. In general, I would like to have the presentation or the walkthrough very interactive. So I encourage everybody to ask questions while we're going through the slides. I will stop from time to time and explicitly look at the questions so we can address the specific questions. I mean, the thing is the ecosystem, if we think about Polkadot, Kusama, and Substrate, is pretty big, and there's like a ton of stuff to do and a ton of like opportunities. So I would definitely want to address all the questions in the right way, rather to go just through a bunch of slides, if that is all right. I can't really see the crowdcast slides crowdcast anymore, so I would ask Justin to just ask questions if he sees them coming around. With that said, I do a little bit of an intro. I guess most of you guys are actually familiar with Polkadot and what it is, but I just want to ensure that we are all on the same page and understand what Polkadot is aiming for. So if we look at the headline of Polkadot, it's claimed to be a layer 0 multi-chain meta protocol that connects different layer 1 parachains. So parachains are these chains which are going to connect to Polkadot and get the security from Polkadot. And most of you will be interested on Substrate and most probably build a parachain or deploy on a parachain based on Substrate, which is connected or is going to connect to Polkadot. And that's what we are addressing. So if we look at an overview of what Polkadot actually is and what are the different, let's say, entities or different paradigms in Polkadot ecosystem, we have the relay chain as like Polkadot Kusama, and one thing is like I will use Polkadot and Kusama very interactively. I see them as both very similar from a point on how you could build on it. I might use Polkadot most of the time, but don't mind, you can do most probably everything that I am talking about on Kusama as well. So we have the relay chain as said. We have these parachains, so like chains executing their own logic, their state transition function in the context of Polkadot. A very similar approach is the parathreads approach, where the difference is for parachains you need like get a slot, get this like long-term capability of receiving validation or proof of validation from the relay chain, and parathreads is more that like on-demand validation. So you don't need to acquire a slot, but you get the security proof based on a demand basis and have to pay for it in that sense. And one that is like a little bit of a specific case is like bridges. So parachains which are built to bridge between Polkadot and other ecosystems or other chains. I mean, this could be what we know is like a Ethereum bridge or a Bitcoin bridge that is like mainly built to transfer most probably tokens or fungible and non-fungible tokens from one chain to the other, but interact seamlessly. So with that said, hopping to the next slide. So if we look at the technical capabilities to build in Polkadot or with Polkadot on Polkadot, we have the most privileged or the most promising building capability is building a parachain. So you build your own layer 1 blockchain that is capable of executing your logic, your vision, your product that you want, and you connect it to Polkadot. The second one is, as I said, like is a parathread. It's a little bit of a lightweight when it comes to validation. So you don't have to prove that every block gets validated. You have to sort of like get on demand, and then Polkadot is validating your parathread blocks. And for sure, if we talk about Substrate, as everything so far is built on Substrate, and you can also build your independent Substrate chain. That is like a solo chain that is running very similar. So Polkadot is built on Substrate, Kusama is built on Substrate. That is running your own environment. Like you don't get like the proof from Polkadot, so you need to build up your own, say, validator set, your community, and this is like the trade-off we're going into later on. And the last two steps that is possible to build in the ecosystem is as a smart contract deployment. So whenever a parachain is enabling the support for smart contracts in the sense of EVM implementation. So this means building smart contracts with Solidity, as well as with Ink or Ask, where the smart contract is compiled to WASM and is then executed as a WASM blob. And when we talk about Ink or Ask, it's rather the language you build your smart contract. So it's like in the sense of in terms of Ink, it's based on Rust. If we talk about Ask, it's on assembly script. But at the end of the day, what it is doing is very similar. These are two ways of deploying on top of a parachain that is already connected to Polkadot. And the last one, so we have 5 different ways to build in Polkadot, and the last one is like building a project in pallets, so as runtime pallets, how you can envision it. So the Substrate stack is built up on the frame, like with pallets. So what teams actually can do is they build their own set of pallets, which have their capabilities of executing the logic, their product vision, and then sort of piggyback a parachain that is already connected to Polkadot or is about to connect to Polkadot, and ask the team who is actually building the parachain to deploy your own smart contract, your own pallet deployment. So add the pallets, add these packages, you could say in a programming language, like a easy, understandable way, to already established runtime that is built on Substrate, and add your pallets to that implementation. So now going step by step as a parachain. So most of the parachains are built with Cumulus. Cumulus is a project that is maintained and built by Parity as well. It utilizes Substrate, but it adds the functionalities to Substrate which are needed to become a parachain. So Substrate is a very generic when it comes to blockchains, as it wants to utilize every or as many possible opportunities on how to build a blockchain as possible. So it's very abstract. But if it comes down to becoming a parachain, you need sort of like a couple of functionalities which are actually enable the parachain functionality. So the parachain is able to connect to the validators, send these blocks to the validators, get the proof from the validators, and execute the runtime in Substrate natively, like traditionally. But it helps you to you don't have to build all these kind of peer-to-peer layer, communication layer on Substrate yourself. You use Cumulus, that is like sort of a framework that is like built to become a parachain. I added a link to the Cumulus repo, and most of the parachain, I think actually all of them right now, are built out of or based on Cumulus, and it's just like a very a super fast way to become a parachain very easily, where you don't have to carry around a lot of this I call it infrastructure stuff. It's not completely correct, but you have the capability of only focusing on your runtime, on your logic that you want to execute, and still giving you the freedom of building your own layer one blockchain. If we come then to the Parathread. So Parathread asset is, from the technical development, it's almost the same or super similar to parachains. So on how you would develop it from a technical standpoint, it's really the same as a parachain. It has just different validation guarantees. So wherein as a parachain, you have to guarantee that every block that you produce gets validated. As a Parathread, you have this on demand whenever you get like the availability from the chain, from the relay chain. It validates your block, and therefore you have to pay on demand. And that's really the big difference between parachains and parathreads. From a technical standpoint, there is no difference. And it is like, if we talk about projects, it's a lot about the question that you have to ask yourself on how much or how many transactions you will have on your parachain, and what is the better model to go for. One disclaimer: parathreads are not yet enabled on Polkadot or on the relay chain. They're on the roadmap to get like implemented. Right now, as most of you most probably know, Polkadot, we're having the auctions. We are onboarding parachains at the moment and have the first parachains connected to Polkadot, but parachains will come pretty soon afterwards. If parachains work, then parathreads should work very similar. And this is like just like a trade-off when you like think about go to market. When do you want to be live, and when do you want to have actually your product up and running? In that sense, that's like this trade-off. One more thing about parathreads. So basically, in the model of parachain and parathreads, in the long term, it is envisioned that sort of the parathread is the on-ramp and the off-ramp of parachains. This means parachain will most probably always become a parathread first, and then they can go, or a parachain team can go into acquiring a slot on Polkadot, and they will be onboarded as a parachain, sort of like upgraded to a parachain. And the same for the downgrading. It's like whenever a parachain has a slot acquired and the slot ends, like it's bounded to 24 months on Polkadot and 48 weeks on Kusama right now, it will be not the parachain will not suddenly disconnect and it's not running and nothing works anymore. It will then be downgraded to a parathread. So it has still the capabilities of getting blocks validated and running, but it gives the time sort of like the team some leverage on maintaining their chain and acquiring a new slot and upgrading, downgrading seamlessly from one to the other. So there's not really an outage. It's just like a change of the functionalities on the validation side. And that's for Parathread and Parachains. And now I mean, for solo chain, it's really the Substrate framework. It's built in the way that you can start your own chain with like different consensus mechanisms. Like you can run it on a proof of stake environment, or a proof of stake setup. You can run it in a proof of work setup. The thing is, it's pretty straightforward to build a solo chain. But the biggest hurdle here is you have to build your own community, which needs to run your nodes and the validation, like either the validator or the node for mining or whatever it is. But you have this like hurdle that you need to build a community that is actually running your software and is maintaining it long term for upgrades and new versions and releases. What you don't need if you connect to Polkadot, and this is like the biggest benefit. You don't have to, like, if we think about layer 2 over like layer 1 blockchains over the last couple of years, most of the teams, they would have worked like years and years to build out their blockchain, and then they need to build their community, and the community needs to be very much engaged with the project, and the team therefore needs to engage them, incentivize them. And this is like the big difference when we compare parachains, parathreads to independent substrate-based chains. So the functionality is very simple and is very straightforward. It's more about like building up your community and maintaining the community in that sense. And just like Polkadot and Kusama and Westland, the test network, are all built on Substrate as well. So it's very similar to what we already have. And it's, I would say, pretty much proven that it works in that sense. Going to the last one, smart contract and runtime palette. So as said, like smart contracts, I think it's very straightforward. There are chains which their USP, their unique selling point is they have capabilities of hosting smart contracts. So you can deploy your smart contracts, and teams in that sense, like parachain teams, what they do is they provide a lot of toolings around building these smart contracts. If we think about a project that is aiming for EVM smart contracts, like a Solidity smart contract, it's Moonbeam. And what Moonbeam has done is like they literally build all their RPC and everything you need to deploy a Solidity-based smart contract around a substrate-based chain. So you can actually use everything that you would be used to on the Ethereum environment and just point these tools and these like smart contract developing tools to a different chain, and then you can seamlessly deploy on Moonbeam, for example. But it's not restricted. Like your development is not restricted to only Moonbeam or only Solidity smart contract. There are chains which aim to host, say, like Ink smart contracts, WASM-based smart contracts, and they do the same. So they build this chain that is executing your WASM smart contract, and they build the tools around to make it easier for you to deploy them. So you don't have to maintain a chain, you don't have to maintain nodes or something like that. You only deploy you deploy on that parachain and piggyback, so to say, that parachain. And a very new paradigm, I would say, is the runtime palette deployment. So you can develop your project as pallets which aim to deploy on Substrate, and then you can use these pallets and coordinate with a parachain team to deploy your pallets on this specific parachain. And that's something very new, because like what is interesting about building out pallets is it gives you a lot more freedom on what you actually build and how do you, like, the capabilities when it comes to the execution and the logic that you actually try to build is a lot more in comparison to smart contracts. Whereas smart contracts, like in this execution environment, in this virtual machine, they restrict you to a lot of capabilities or functionalities that are actually sort of like Turing complete. But in the sense of runtime palettes, you have a lot more freedom what you can actually build and what your logic that you build can look like. And this is like something really new, and we see like now that the first parachains are live on Kusama, and the first parachains are going to be onboarded on the 17th or 18th December on Polkadot. That's like a very new paradigm that we see in the ecosystem, that a lot of teams who either previously aimed to become a parachain or always like were pretty aware of this, like now coordinating with parachain teams to add their parachain, their palette logic to that parachain, and then do either a runtime update or integrate the palettes right on the connection time into the runtime, and sort of piggybacking this parachain so they don't need to acquire their own slot on the relay chain. They can just coordinate with the team and use the parachain team's parachain. And that's something that I think is super interesting because it reduces the hurdle on what you need when it comes to like backing your parachain, to acquiring a slot and all this kind of stuff. And it's way easier. It's sort of like the only restriction is you need to comply to the parachain team's implementation, what means that the execution is most probably the native token from the parachain and stuff like that. But it's very limited, I would say, when it comes to the capabilities of developing something and building it out.
Ben, sorry,
yeah.
there's a couple of questions I think that are make sense
All
to
right.
ask right now. So one is actually connected to this. Basically, do you see technical difficulties of maintaining these types of applications / palettes integrated into a parachain?
Yes. Yes. Of course, you need to follow the release cycle of the parachain and ensure that you are able to merge, like whenever Substrate as the base layer does an update on a new version or a new release, and it has impacts on either the runtime API or the RPCs on the host function, that you need to coordinate with the parachain team to comply to the new release. It's as long as the host function and the APIs are not really changing, it is rather straightforward. But if there is a lot of change in the API or the RPC, then you need to comply to these changes. But it would be sort of like both teams working on the same repo and they ensuring that the new upgrade is implemented and merged into this new deployment.
Cool. I think that answers it. So then we have two questions that are connected to pair threads, and I think if I read it correctly, it's basically the same thing. So what is the cost of running a pair thread annually, or you know, whatever benchmark I think you can give? I personally don't know if we have done any kind of cost estimation at this point, but maybe you have more ideas.
No, that's something I can't really answer because we haven't tried it. There are some assumptions, but it's really hard because it would be how much is the cost for validating one block for a parathread, and this is like for sure on terms of how many parathreads are actually connected and how many parathreads can be connected to one slot. If we think of like one slot at the moment can validate, I think it's like 6 seconds, every 6 seconds a block at the moment. I think it's actually 12 seconds in total because you need 2 validations. But it would be literally every second they get a slot, they get a block validated from the relay chain. And then the question is, how much can we split them, or how many parathreads can connect to one slot and get like these blocks into the relay chain to get the validation back. But it will be a lot. It will be ridiculous cheap. That's something that I've heard from the devs, because you have this huge capability into the validation of one slot every 6 seconds, and these can be utilized by every parathread continuously on like sort of a queue basis.
Cool. I think that answers it very nicely. So we also have a question about learning Rust versus Substrate concurrently, consecutively, whatever. But I think that question might be better in the later portion of your talk, when you talk about getting involved in hackathons and stuff like that. Maybe we can touch upon it a bit later. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I have like a bunch of slides on how to learn actually Substrate and how to learn Rust and what courses are available and where to look. I think this is like addressed in one of the last slides.
Cool. Then one more question popped up for pair threads. Is it possible for a parachain to lease out pair threads?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is not possible for a parachain to lease out parathread slots, because you need to connect the parathread into the validator set. So you wouldn't be really able to build a parachain that, because what you would do is like a parachain that is acting as a parathread is forwarding the POV, the proof of validity, to the parachain, and the parachain that is actually connected to the slot would then have to forward the block to the relay chain, to the validators, which actually validating the block. So it would be a proxy, and I don't think that is possible right now. But I mean, I would never say no as long as nobody has really tried it to do so. In general, I think it would be pretty difficult to do so.
Cool. I think that answers it. There's no more questions at this point, so keep on going.
All right, then let's hop to the next slide. The question why you should build in the Polkadot ecosystem versus other chains. I mean, the overall structure is that concept of what Polkadot is enabling right now is not really available in any other chain right now, in any other concept right now. If we think about the capabilities and the opportunities you get by connecting to Polkadot, it's a bunch of things that are just like very new and I think very valuable for teams trying to build in the ecosystem. So let's start out with a couple of examples. So one is the cross-chain interoperability, right? What we see right now is like teams, parachain teams, they connect to each other. They are suddenly able to move tokens from one chain to the other chain. These parachains are actually able to speak with each other in a trustless way. So there is no trusted entity in between, and it's guaranteed. The execution is guaranteed by the relay chain and the protocol itself. So this is something that we see already, and I hope we will see a lot more, that suddenly you have use cases which were not possible before or were not possible in a trustless way. So it's really that you have multiple layer one chains which execute their own logic, like a team specializing on DeFi and a team specializing on another product. They can suddenly interact in a way that is very similar as you would send a transaction on just one chain. And this is like very amazing, I think. Scalability, so the high transaction throughput and like literally the guarantees from Substrate, it's just like amazing what we see like with this improved transaction frequency and what is possible here. It's the third one is easy to build and deploy. It's really like, if somebody looks in the context on how much effort it took over the last couple of years to build out a layer one blockchain versus teams that have built a parachain over the last couple of months. So we have teams, or we have teams in the ecosystem who really built out their parachain in 4 to 6 months, like from the get-go. They started to build like a true layer one blockchain within a couple of months. So the resources which are required to build something like that out, by utilizing Substrate as these stackable, composable blockchain framework, and the security guarantees like that you get from Polkadot by building a parachain, it's just amazing when it comes to go to market. So it's like a lot less resource intensive on all layers, like on the layers of technical capabilities, technical resources, development resources, and therefore also like for financial resources, you need to build out a sophisticated layer one chain. The high sharded security, so you have the validators, the proof of stake on Polkadot, and it's like sort of this shared execution. So transactions happening on all parachains, and therefore it's like just like a total different number of transactions in the whole ecosystem. I mentioned more energy efficient. Sure, it's a proof of stake. I don't know if this is like still. I think it's pretty much a standard that a lot of chains, or in the ecosystem, that a lot of chains going into proof of stake nowadays. That proof of work is sort of this mechanism that used to be what powers and secures blockchains, but now with proof of stake. But sure, Polkadot is a proof of stake as well. And the flexibility. And this is like what I will go into the next slide as well. It's these 5 different building mechanisms sort of cover a lot of flexibility for a developer and the team to build out their idea or their project. I have a slide that gives a good overview of, or tries to give an overview of what to consider in a couple of different ways. So on the top, we see the 5 possibilities of building in the ecosystem. So we have what we went through already. It's the independent substrate-based chain, it's a parachain, it's a parathread, it's a runtime on a parachain, and it's the smart contract deployment on a parachain. And then you have these trade-offs. So it's always a trade-off between what is the flexibility, the technology flexibility you can actually build versus how much time does it take. And as you see on the slide, it's like, if we talk about speed of development, sure, runtime, like smart contracts, is the easiest way going forward, but it has like a lot of restrictions when it comes to complexity. If we talk about the runtime on a parachain, it is like not as fast as building just a set of smart contracts, but it's way faster than building your own chain. And that's like these trade-offs that I think it's very important for teams looking into the ecosystem to figure out what is the best trade-off in all these layers. Like, we have speed of development, allowed logic complexity, maintenance overhead, scalability, possible cost to deploy, throughput, and guaranteed inclusion. And now over these metrics, you see very, very much that, like, in the context of building of Substrate or with Substrate, you still have the capability of do certain trade-offs at different stages of your project. You can always build your smart contracts, but you can also build your smart contracts logic into palette and logic. But you can also use your palette logic going forward and do an inbuild into parathread. But then with parathread, you have like sort of more maintenance overhead because you need to maintain these nodes and the collators which are running your node logic. And the same is for the scalability. So smart contracts for sure are not as scalable as a parachain. And this is like another trade-off where you have to go like, okay, what do I expect from performance-wise for my project? Like, how much usage do I have? Or is my usage actually just very limited? And it's more about the logic and enabling this functionality going forward. And I think this is like a very good slide for teams to sort of like go through and figure out what deployment is best for their use case. And it's always very specific for every project. What is interesting, looking at all these possibilities to build something and these trade-offs and on like the performance and the resources, it's not an either or. You can always migrate from one to the other. So you can always like build your smart contract logic and then move to a palette, as I said before. But also, if you have a palette stack that you have built, you can move your palette stack into a substrate, into the runtime, and run your own node. And then you get like an increased performance for sure, because you don't share one parachain, you have your own parachain, but you get like the overhead of maintenance and resource management. But the point here is like, it is this trade-off between the specifics for the project, but they are not exclusive. So you can always move from one to the other, force them back with more or less overhead, but most of them are pretty seamlessly going forward to move around in between. I hope that makes sense and makes it a good overview of what is possible from a technical development. I would like, when it comes to the technical development, one more slide. It's the overview of like, if people, individual developers or teams are looking into what to build for, it's like, what product do you want to build? What is your vision? Where do you want to go? What is your capability? So it's not only restricted to build always a chain to be capable of building something in the ecosystem. It's also the same, like there's a lot of tooling, wallets that needs to get built, and this stack sort of like gives an overview of what level in the whole technology stack are you aiming for, and hopefully this gives like a lot of people an idea where they could literally build something or contribute with their specific skill sets. I mean, if we talk about at the highest level on consumer, it is like we talk about UI interfaces, user experiences. How can there be built a product that is like easier to interface with the whole tech suite? And then if we go one layer deeper, it's like, what parachain are you building? Are you building a parachain? Or are you aiming to build a parachain that is aiming to be a platform where you say, okay, I built a infrastructure parachain where I hope that other builders gonna deploy some products on top of it. But you can also build like parachains which are enabling a service. So you have like a parachain that is like doing one specific thing and offering this service into the ecosystem for other parachains to utilize. So you can have like say like what we have with hidden transactions, like where you have shielded transactions, and these parachain can actually get used from other parachains to execute transactions in this specific way. And that's just something that I would like to encourage people to look at and see how they can contribute, because it's not restricted to only build something in Rust or build only something on Substrate or build only a parachain or build only a solo chain or something. There's a lot more opportunities to build in the ecosystem and focus on one specific skills to apply them in the right way. And with that said, I would be ending the technical guidance through deployment. I don't know if we have questions actually right now.
You can move on. It's fine.
Okay, then I'm gonna hop to the next slide. So ecosystem support. So we went through the technical capabilities or possibilities to build something in the ecosystem. The next one, if you want to build, there's really a ton of support available in the ecosystem. And I think we can really say that we built out over the last couple of years an industry leading ecosystem support environment where you get support on all the different, on the one side, all the different stages of your project, wherever you're currently with the build, but at the same time, aiming for different projects. I mean, a project can be an open source project that you just want to build something out and you would want to share it with the community. But at the same time, you can then build your project or your team that is like a long-term sustainable project team that is like going for more a startup environment. And all these different setups need different support. If we look at this graphic, you see an overview of what are different initiatives that are available for people, teams, developers looking into the ecosystem and trying to build something. And then on the horizontal or on the vertical level, it is like it tries to separate the right engagement at the right stage. I mean, if we have the top right, it's really to start engage with the ecosystem. On the top is like the education and the growth going into the ecosystem. Then we have the ideation on figuring out how to build it, actually what to build. And then we come down to the product development and actually launching a chain in the ecosystem, or launching a chain or a product in the ecosystem, I need to say. And I try to give an overview, or I want to give an overview of a couple of specific support initiatives that we have, and give a bit of context what they're aiming for. So we have around, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 different initiatives I picked, and I think we should gonna share the slides afterwards. Had added a couple of links to read up on them, but I just want to give a quick overview of what they are actually. So I think a good entrance into the ecosystem is the ambassador engagement. Either you follow an ambassador on your region, you get engaged with an ambassador, or you're gonna try to be your own ambassador. And this is really aiming for people who want to become active into the ecosystem, who want to be like supporting the ecosystem and engaging with the ecosystem. And that's the Polkadot Ambassador program. That's like the training environment. So this is like for developers, people who are looking into getting better or learning Substrate or Rust. I wouldn't aim too much on Rust because the Rust as a programming language, I think there's like a ton of educational material on different MOOCs or wherever you look for. But if you look at developing with Rust in the context of Substrate, there is like the Substrate Runtime Developer Academy and the online Substrate course from the Parity, from the Asia team, from Parity Asia team. And these like educational programs which try to help you learn on how to build with Substrate, really from zero to hero, from a beginner to like a full-fledged developer. And I think that's a good resources for anybody who is looking into get more familiarized with developing something with Substrate or in the context of Substrate. When I say in the context of Substrate, I always mean stuff like that is counted, like can be infrastructure. So tooling that supports the usage of Substrate. Well, we are here in a hackathon, so that's definitely a way to get like connected with developers, see what other developers are doing, aim for a project, build something out, and yeah, just hack around. I think it's a good way to engage, to see what others are doing, to learn. I added a couple of links of hackathons that have happened in the past, and I think it's just a good way to follow and engage if somebody is really interested into learning more and getting, let's say, that their hands dirty in that way. If somebody has gone through all of these, I think a good way to get more serious, I would say, is looking at the Web3 Foundation Grant. The Web3 Foundation Grant is a good way to start out to build something very serious or more serious in the ecosystem. The grant itself is divided in 3 levels. So you have the first level that is aiming for individuals and small teams. The second level is for small teams and startups rather. And the last level is for companies and foundations who have really built something before and want to build some like a bigger project. And when it comes to the grants, it's a good starting point to get into the ecosystem of building actually tooling or open source products that might be very valuable and usable in the ecosystem. And the grants team is, I mean, they did a fabulous job in encouraging teams to build, give them feedback, do some milestone where developers or teams can actually learn from, and helping them out with some grants and funding to iterate around an idea or something that somebody wants to learn. And the level 1 from the grants is very encouraging for new developers to get into the ecosystem and be super active and build actually a product into the ecosystem. And I think it's a good entryway. If somebody has not its complete startup already figured out and knows what to build, it's a good way to get into the grants. Has also the RFPs, like the request for proposals. So they set up a bunch of definitions where people can actually look at and say, so the grants maintains an overview of what products they think are needed in the ecosystem, and they give like sort of a description what it should be and what you should be capable of. And I think that's a very good way for anybody who has interest in building something and the capabilities of building something, but doesn't really know what would be the right product to go for. The treasury, of course, the on-chain treasury from Polkadot and Kusama, a super good way to go with any product that you have an idea of and that might be usable for the ecosystem. And treasury also, I think, it's definitely not only restricted to developers. I mean, we had the Polkadot redesign running. I mean, this is like a design initiative to go through Polkadot that is funded through the chain, and it's aiming for like designers and marketing people. I mean, this is like the cool thing. We're going away, like not going away, but we're also very inclusive in adding new capabilities, new skills into the ecosystem, and it's a way to provide funding and help for people who want to get engaged in the ecosystem and build something useful. So Treasury is a super great way. I added 2 links on the Treasury definition and Polka Assembly, what is like the web page where the Treasury proposals get discussed, they get published there. People can interact and see what other people, what other teams are building, and it's a good way to look and follow. The Web3 Bootcamp, definitely a more serious way to build something, to get engaged. If you are a team, a startup that is already building something on Substrate with Substrate, and you're aiming to become a long-term Substrate startup, being very active and long-term engaged in the ecosystem, the Web3 Bootcamp is a good way to get familiarized and get support from the Parity Asia team. They are super happy to guide you and give you good feedback. And it's definitely the way for anybody who is looking rather into a startup environment than like an individual contributor versus like or open source tooling builder. And the next one is the accelerating incubator partnerships. There's a bunch of accelerating incubator programs out there which help startups in the early phases. If you have like your vision and you want to build something, but it's not yet super specific and clear what is the right path, what is the go-to-market strategy, accelerators are a really good way to help you iterate around and do the ideation phase where they say like, okay, what do you need to think of, how do you tackle your users, how to get like your project up. And that's like, I added 2 links as well. It's like the Berkeley Accelerator has been a very promising, like a very good one. And I think a couple of months ago, or the first cohort of the Outlier Venture Polkadot Basecamp already finished. And the next one, I think it's just around the corner to start again. So these are very good initiatives to start if you in an early stage, pre-MVP, pre like minimal viable product, pre-POC proof of concept stage to help you figure out how to build actually your startup. And then we have the Substrate Builders program. So the Substrate Builders program is an initiative from Parity. It's really a project that helps you from MVP, POC to become a live product, a production grade product. So it's a 9-month program, and it is focusing on developing like in-depth developing technical support. And it's really away from being like a startup that has like an ideation, an idea, have built out the first proof of concept, and now aims to become a production grade product startup in the ecosystem. And I added the link to the page as well. There's an application process, but that's like super serious if you want to go that route. And the Builders for Builders program. So Builders for Builders program is in collaboration with parachain teams. So parachain teams who have successfully built their parachain and are already connected to the relay chain or about to connect to the relay chain. We have collaborated with these teams to help them build out a project or a program that is very similar to the Builders program in that sense. So the teams are aiming or providing the same technical support as you get in the Builders program for teams or people who want to deploy on a parachain. So literally it's like, if you want to deploy your product on a parachain, then it is a good way to connect with these parachain teams, because then you get support from the parachain teams itself who actually develop the parachain and get the support in through a very structured program, and they will help you to deploy your product on their parachain. And the last one is what we maintain is the Substrate Delivery Partners Program. So this is like initiative that is also maintained by Parity. So Parity has connections or collaborations with different software development shops, which are evaluated and vetted on from Parity side that they are capable to develop Substrate-based products. This means like if you're, it has two facets. The one is like if you're more say like a business aiming team and you need somebody who is actually capable of building your product, you can reach out to us and we're going to connect you with one of the teams who are actually able to build your product on Substrate or with Substrate. And at the same time, it is also a way for teams who actually are having like their own developers and developing to extend their development capabilities. So this means like if you need more resources on developing something, then you can connect with us and we connect you then with the delivery partners to enhance your building and development resources going forward. And with that said, I think we covered quite a lot of ground. I hope that helped everybody a little bit to navigate to the ecosystem. Always feel free to reach out to us. We are super happy to help and support. And there is like, I think there's a ton of opportunities for everybody into the ecosystem to build something.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ben. This was really, really good. There's 2 questions left to answer. 3, is the presentation recorded and will you share the slides? Both, yes. This is also actually live streamed to YouTube, and it's going to be available both here as well as on YouTube. There's 2 questions. Let's start from the top. So, in your opinion and what you've seen in the past, you interact with a lot of developers, Rust versus Substrate, I think Rust is upcoming, has been for many years. We've seen that not just in blockchain, in our ecosystem, but in general. What's your take on that, right? Do you see people that are very good Rust developers to be really good Substrate developers as well? What are maybe some of the other building blocks that people need to dive in? Blockchain in general is quite a leap for some people, especially I think like students coming in and maybe more the junior people. So generally, what's your take? How do you advise people to proceed here?
Yeah. Of course, if you want to build with Substrate, it helps if you know Rust already. It also helps if you have like a knowledge of a low-level programming language. We see a lot of people coming from other low-level like C#, C++, whatever it is. It's just this like basic understanding how these programming languages work, how they compile, what the compiler says you, how to speak with the compiler. I mean, this is like, I would say that the basic principles of building with a low-level programming language versus with like a scripting language or something like that. For sure that helps in the first place. And then the implementation of Rust in Substrate is very opinionated. So there's a lot of like specific macros that like execute or they build or compile to what a Substrate is needed. But I think it's pretty like what we've seen as soon as people or developers are able to understand how these programming languages work, it's pretty easy to get started with Substrate. And I also think it's not the programming language, like if you know the programming language in the first place, the hurdle is not the programming language using it in Substrate. It's always more the hurdle of understanding then blockchain and decentralized execution, decentralized ledger technology. It's more what is the consensus? How do nodes get to a consensus? How do they communicate? And that's, if we go back to the first slides, it's really what Substrate tries to abstract, but at the same time enables you. So as a Substrate developer, you don't necessarily need to understand what proof of stake is. You just use the palette that is like built in Substrate, but you're able to build your execution logic. I mean, sure, you need some sort of understanding because like the storage is some way of how it is maintained, but it's this abstraction of, okay, you can not understand anything, but you can almost build your blockchain out of the box kind of thing. But at the same time, Substrate is open enough to go to the deep level of changing the consensus algorithms. We have teams, they have like changed their consensus, the frequency, the block production, which is like super low into the substrate development. But at the same time, we have seen teams that just build a palette and then sort of throw it onto substrate, and it works because, and that's, I think, the trade-off where you want to go. If you want to build highly complex implementations, then sure, you need to understand a lot of Substrate, how it is built, how the architecture is. If you want to build like a pretty straightforward execution logic that is like capable of a decentralized implementation, then it's pretty straightforward if you have like at least understanding of Rust. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, there's no like one very simple answer to that, right? It really depends on a lot of factors. I know. I think you did a good job. Hopefully, Kryptonite is going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, guys, feel free to follow up with these questions in the Discord channel, whatever. Reach out to me on email. It's no problem. So one very interesting question actually about bridging. So Astar won the third auction, right? And they are parts of their execute runtime logic is also EVM as well as WASM. So you're going to be able to do both smart contracts, if I understand it correctly. Douglas is asking, is it possible to have their level one solution, so their L1, bridge to another blockchain like Cosmos? So I don't know how familiar you are with Astar, but in general, I mean, let's maybe talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, I know where you're coming from. It is possible. I don't know specific if Astar has already implemented it, but what we have seen from, I think it was Mixbytes, they have done a smart contract triggered XCM execution. So XCM is the protocol that is doing the cross consensus messaging passing. Like, not messaging passing. Passing is the implementation of the protocol, but it's like the sort of like your. It's not 100% right. It's sort of like your TCP, where you say, okay, I don't really care what language I send through this stuff, if it is HTML or whatever it is, or JavaScript or whatever it is, but it's a layer, a channel where I can communicate to other servers, right? And this is like the XCM implementation. But then you have different modules, like different protocols that use this communication channel to send messages back and forth. And this is what we have seen with, like, it is possible already in the parachain. So parachains communicate through XCM. But what we have seen lately was the first implementation. I think Mixbyte was really the first one, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Who have triggered an XCM message from a smart contract level. And if you are able to do this, then there is no restriction on cross-chain communication, because the cross-chain communication is, as soon as these ecosystem or consensus mechanisms are connected, it doesn't really matter where the message is coming from. But the hurdle right now is to have these functionalities exposed in the smart contract environment, so that the smart contract is actually able to create a XCM message that can then be sent, like XMP, actually, it would be a protocol message, but that is leveraging the XCM protocol to send this message to another not Polkadot ecosystem, actually ecosystem in the crypto space. So it could be Ethereum or wherever it goes. It's definitely a way to go, but from a technical standpoint, there is no restriction right now, and this is actually something that we strongly aiming for to make possible as soon as possible. I think it's definitely a cool way to go forward.
So in general, to the Cosmos bridge, I know there's teams working on Ethereum and Bitcoin bridges. Do you know of other bridging capabilities that are kind of coming up?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a couple of teams working on different bridges to different other ecosystem chains. There's I think 2 or 3 teams working on the Cosmos implementation. I can't name them right now. It is a bit of like right now, sort of like a challenge for teams going forward and implementing it. And so it is possible teams have implemented it and they like in a testnet and they're trying it. The trade-off is always like, how much decentralized is it? Is it like do you have like any mechanisms of custody in there? Is there like a central entity or team or governance, whatever, that is actually controlling the bridge at the end of the day? Or is it a fully decentralized bridge? I mean, for sure, we're all aiming for the fully decentralized, but then we have to trade off, like most of the time, performance, cost, and speed. But it's a thing that we want to do in the Web3 environment, right? It's like we don't want to have this trusted entities. So I guess we will see these bridges more in not 100% decentralized way, but there's a lot of teams are actually working on a fully decentralized bridges to different ecosystems.
Cool. All right. I think one more final question. What is going on with Area 51 Stack Exchange? So what is going on there?
Come on, guys, vote for it. I mean, we need people who, like, I don't know what is going on. I mean, the thing is, we want to have like definitely a page on Stack Exchange. Maybe I can give a bit of feedback. Over the last year, and I think also in relation to the Substrate Builders program, we have built up very close connections with a lot of teams who are aiming to build Substrate parachains, and we gave them a lot of support. But what we figured out is like the support is sort of enclosed in different messaging channels, right? It's like in the engagement with these teams, and this doesn't help the ecosystem. This doesn't help anybody, because there's a lot of knowledge that is like encapsulated into these messaging. So what we would like to do, or what we really look forward, is to have like an open platform where we can start discussing, giving feedback from the core developers, helping people in the ecosystem on a more scalable way, to be actually able to see what is the right implementation, how to work with it, what has been done already, and like just like get all this information back on, like, say, in the internet, I say it right now. So it is like everybody's capable to process it and look at it and do a lot, like, do a much better job in knowledge sharing from our side, and that's why we would like to push it forward as much as possible and just see this page coming alive. And we're super eager to go there and help you guys. So please vote and please get this thing. I mean, we need the community, we need people to vote for it. Yeah, that's going on.
Yeah, that's actually I am super supportive of this. I think it's like you said, we need like one place that's open for all communication. Everybody's kind of there. It's a gathering space, and Stack Overflow is kind of that spot. To give an update on that, we're currently in the commitment phase, which is, as far as I know, is the last step before like having a proper beta. And we're actually coming close. It says 64%, but if you look into it a little bit closer, we are 64% of committers with 200 plus rep. So we've actually ticked quite a lot of boxes. There's a couple of more people that we need that are, have spent more than 5 seconds on Stack Overflow. So yeah, please, like Jimmy said in the chat, please help us vote on this. We want to move it forward. I think it's been going actually quite well. Within like 20 or 20 something days, we've moved across the 3 stages, so it's been quite good. But yeah, a public appeal to everybody, please go ahead and vote on that. But with that said, I think we have answered all of the questions. So we've also hit the top of the hour. We're actually passed it a little bit. Ben, any final thoughts from your end?
Yeah, I mean, one side, do the Friday afternoon thing and click commit to Area 51, that we get this page up. On the other side, feel free to reach out to us. I mean, we're super happy to engage with you guys. We think Polkadot can just like grows in value, and it's just like the best ecosystem if we have developers and people who are coming in and build something. We're definitely encouraging a community of build first. I mean, we want to have this technology. We are happy to do some sort of science and try things out and have not done before, and we're super curious about new ideas. So I invite everybody to reach out, to get in contact with us, and we're more than happy to help whenever we can.
Cool, fantastic. I think that that is Super cool finisher. Before we hop off, Justin, any thoughts from your end? How can I reach you? You can reach us via Discord. You can reach us. I'm Urban at Web3 Foundation. I think it's Ben at parity.io or Benjamin at parity.io or something like that. We can type it up in the chats.
Or Element. All of us are like almost 24/7 in Element, Substrate technical, Parachain technical. These are the channels where you find us, and it's very easy to get in contact with us.
Exactly. So with that said, Justin, any final words?
Yeah. So just quick reminder for those who are actually with the hackathon and all. Really for those who have not yet registered, I am just going to quickly share my screen and jump a couple of slides in. I'm just going to put the QR code there so that it basically kind of put in over here. So basically, there are actually lots of things that actually are up for grabs in terms for the winners of the hackathon. We do have prizes, top three for the Build a Blockchain. We have a winner for AngelHack as well, and 5 winners were awarded for the Docathon track. All these includes the workshop prizes that Urban I guess someone have actually mentioned in the chat as well. And also apart from cash prize, there are a lot of opportunities out there as well. So you really need to leverage on this opportunity to build on something that can, kind of further to kind of like further it post this hackathon and really to build something within the Polkadot ecosystem. Ben have shared a lot of ways, be it the technical side of things or any other potential opportunities that can be explored within the ecosystem and really to grab on and, just be part of the bigger thing as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're going to make sure to share the Ben slides as well as a link to this video so that if there's anybody who needs to rewatch this or needs more information, you're going to have access to this. So with that said, thank you very much, everybody. Ben, thank you for being here. The fantastic presentation hopefully was helpful for everybody. And yeah, I'm going to see you on Discord. I hope you're finishing up your submissions. We still have quite a few days actually, but yeah, looking forward to see what you're coming up with. So thank you very much. Happy Friday, and I wish you all a very nice weekend. Goodbye.
Thank you for having me. Have a good one. Bye bye.